You are welcome to the Messiah channel. We are awakening the Hebrew Israelites because the final trumpet of heaven has sounded. Today we are asking the question, why should Hebrew Israelites be awakened? This is a question that needs to be discussed. Why should Hebrew Israelites be awakened? It's a prophetic question. And before I go further, we need to answer the question, who is a Hebrew? Where does the word Hebrew come from? Where does it come from, the word Hebrew? We go to Genesis 14 verse 13. And in Genesis 14 verse 13, the Bible describes a Hebrew. Abraham was a Hebrew, and he is described as a Hebrew. The descendants of Abraham are Hebrews because Abraham was a Hebrew, based on Genesis chapter 14 verse 13. And the Hebrew Israelites are the descendants of Abraham. And so when somebody is in Chicago, he is a black person, or somebody is in Timbuktu in Africa, he is a black person and he says he's a Hebrew, then prophetically the deduction is that he is a descendant of Abraham. And nowadays people call themselves Hebrew Israelites. And when they say they are Hebrew Israelites, they want to disassociate themselves with the term a Jew, because when people talk about Jews, mostly they are talking about white people, Ashkenazi Jews who moved to Israel after 1948. They moved to Israel from places like Romania, Ukraine, East Germany, and Russia. But the Hebrew Israelites are always Hebrew Israelites. They are Hebrews by bloodline, and they need to be awakened. And when we talk about Hebrews and we say that Abraham was a Hebrew, based on Genesis 14 verse 13, then we understand why Jesus Christ, Yeshua, is a Hebrew, because he comes from the line of Abraham, the same way that the Hebrew Israelites also come from the bloodline of Abraham. The Hebrew Israelites are not Hebrews because they converted to Judaism. They are Hebrews by bloodline. And why should they be awakened? They should be awakened because of distortion of Bible history, distortion of the Hebrew identity of the Negroes. And it has been done intentionally for centuries. And it is possible because those who have control in the world over the printing press, over the media, over governments, it is in their interest to distort the history of the Negroes, particularly after the emergence of the so-called Renaissance in Europe, where Europeans began to look at everything from black and white. White is good, black is bad. And that is the distortion I'm talking about, or it is part of the distortion I'm talking about. Distortion by painting. And here we're talking about the painting of Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. They all took part. They became architects of distortion of Bible facts, distorting the Hebrew identity of the so-called Negroes. And so the Hebrews need to be awakened. They need to be awakened to know that their history has been intentionally distorted. Their identity as Hebrews has been intentionally distorted. And so they need to be awakened. This destruction of black civilization, that is the title of a book written by Chancellor Williams. And it is understandable. It is not difficult to understand why the history of the Negro has been distorted for centuries. Because those who have control, power, through events in history, through wars, through colonization, through imperialism, cultural imperialism, through the transatlantic slave trade, they were able to position themselves in the hierarchy of world power, and they use that power to distort the history of other people in order to make themselves look good. And it included the distortion of the Hebrew history in the Bible, in both Old and in the New Testament. So the Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened. Why should they be awakened? They should be awakened because they are sitting on covenants, agreements, covenants made by the Lord who created the universe. The God of the Hebrews, he has made covenants with the Hebrews, the Hebrew Israelites, and they need to be awakened. The Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened. They need to be awakened so that they will know the covenant that God has with them. God and the Negro is a subject. It's a prophetic subject. God and the Hebrew Israelites is a prophetic subject. It's a prophetic subject because the relationship of God and the Hebrews is the subject of the Old Testament. The Old Testament is a history of God and the Hebrew Israelites, period. And when you go into that history, you see covenants between God and the Hebrews. And from that covenant, we see the land promised to Abraham and his descendants. And when we're talking about land promised to Abraham and his descendants, we are talking about the land that is now occupied by those who claim that they are the chosen of God. And the covenant of God that the Hebrews are waiting for, it is more than land. It is about inheritance. Inheritance in the kingdom of the Most High. It is an everlasting kingdom. And the Hebrew prophet Daniel talked about the kingdom in Daniel chapter 2 verse 44. And the prophet Daniel said that the kingdoms of this world, and he's talking about the Gentile kingdoms, they will fall. And then the kingdom will come. It will be the kingdom of the Messiah. And that kingdom will last forever and ever. The Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened that they have an inheritance in the Messianic kingdom that is coming. The kingdom of Yeshua, Jesus Christ, the kingdom that is coming very soon, is a kingdom where the Hebrew Israelites have an inheritance. The inheritance is not in the governments of the world. The inheritance is not in the governments and the economies of the heathen nations, the Gentile nations that we see today, whether we're talking about America, whether you're talking about Great Britain or Germany or Spain. These are the Gentile nations that scattered the children of Jacob to all the four corners of the earth. The Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened because they are sitting on prophecy. They are sitting on covenants. A covenant about land given to Abraham and his descendants. Land given to Abraham, a Hebrew, based on Genesis 14:13, and his descendants, the children of Jacob, who are Hebrew Israelites. The world has devalued them and the world calls them Negroes, but they are actually the Hebrews. The Negroes are the Hebrews. I'm not saying Negroes are Hebrews. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the Negroes are the Hebrews. The word "the" must come. The Negroes are the Hebrews. I'm not saying Negroes are Hebrews. I'm saying Negroes are the Hebrews. There's a difference between Negroes being Hebrews and Negroes being the Hebrews. I'm repeating the last statement. The Negroes are the Hebrews, and they need to be awakened. And the awakening should be now. Why? Because the Messiah is preparing to come. And so the Negroes who are the Hebrews, they need to be awakened so that they will remember the covenant that the Lord had with their ancestors. Covenant about land, covenant about eternal inheritance in the kingdom of the Most High that is coming. We also need to awaken the Hebrew Israelites for them to remember that the Lord has plans for those who are Gentiles. And modern preachers, evangelicals, they are talking about grafting. And when we're talking about grafting, we are talking about a spiritual process where Gentiles who are not Hebrew Israelites, they are grafted into the kingdom of the Most High. The Old Testament focuses on the Hebrew Israelites, but in the New Testament, there's a grafting. Gentiles have been grafted into the kingdom of the Most High, which related to the Hebrew Israelites in the Old Testament. The Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened that the fact that Gentiles are grafted in doesn't mean that Hebrew Israelites have been replaced by Gentiles or have been replaced by the church. Because if you look at the writings of Paul, it's very clear that Gentiles are part of salvation. Salvation plan of the Most High applies to the Gentiles, both the Gentiles and the Hebrews. And so the Hebrews need to be awakened that, oh, God, the Lord of the universe, the Lord of Hebrews, He's so merciful that He has allowed Gentiles to be part of salvation. And we need to recognize that. In the same way, when there is a baby, the only child, and the mother is pregnant, and then the next morning, a new baby is born, and then the child who thought he was the only child sees a new baby, and the child is jealous. The child must be awakened that a new baby has come, and he's part of the family. And so the Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened that Gentiles have been grafted in, but it doesn't mean that the Gentiles have been given what? A better position than the Hebrews. Paul is saying, in the kingdom of the Most High, there's no difference between the Hebrew and the Gentile. And when he said that, he was saying that salvation belongs to both the Hebrews and the Gentiles. But that doesn't mean that the church or the Gentiles have replaced the Hebrew Israelites. Why do I say that? I say that because there are specific prophecies related to the Hebrew Israelites, and the Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened about the specific covenants, the specific prophecies, and their obligations with regard to those covenants and also those prophecies that relate specifically to the Hebrew Israelites, who the world calls the Negroes. And so we go into the Bible, we go into the Old Testament, the time of Prophet Moses. God was dealing with the Hebrew Israelites who were sent into Egypt. And the prophet Moses went to gather them from Egypt. The Old Testament is about the Hebrew Israelites. And you will say, or you can say that the Old Testament is about the Negroes. If you equate the Hebrews with the Negroes, then we are saying that the Hebrew Israelites were the subject of discussion in the Old Testament during the time of Moses, during the time when Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, when those books were written, the books were written about the Hebrews, the Hebrew Israelites. The Hebrew Israelite were the subject of the Old Testament. And so the captivity of the Hebrew Israelites recorded in Deuteronomy 28, particularly Deuteronomy 28 verse 68, was about the Hebrew Israelites, the Negroes, if you will, the chosen of God, the Hebrew Israelites, the Negroes who are scattered over the world. The New Testament came in, and Paul came in the New Testament. Paul was a Hebrew Israelite. I've done videos about the ethnicity of Paul, and Paul taught that the Bible is only about the Hebrew Israelites until God gave him a revelation. Peter, the apostle, taught that the Bible is only about the Hebrew Israelites until the Lord gave him a revelation. To Peter, the revelation was about a Gentile called Cornelius. The Messiah told Peter to go and preach and bring salvation to the Gentile Cornelius. And Paul, he was doing his own thing. He was a Hebrew Israelite. And the Lord gave me a revelation that the Gentiles are part of salvation. And so Paul and Peter knew that the Gentiles are part of salvation. But Paul was very clear that he is a Hebrew Israelite. He was very proud about it. And he said he's from the tribe of Benjamin. And it doesn't mean that the church has replaced the Hebrew Israelites. The Lord has a plan for the Gentiles. That's why Paul said that salvation is for both the Hebrews and the Gentiles. The Hebrews need to be awakened. So if anybody is teaching that the church has replaced the Hebrew Israelites, then it's a misrepresentation of biblical fact. So let's look into the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, letters were sent to the 7 churches. Those are the churches of the Messiah. And so Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened. So when you hear the church, don't think the church is not in the Bible. I was watching a video and the presenter, she's an African American and making a lot of videos that are false, saying that the church is controlled by demons, and that is a fake preaching, because in the book of Revelation, the Messiah gave letters to be given to the 7 churches. So the church is of God. The church is of Christ. The church is of the Messiah. Churches are preaching false doctrines. That doesn't mean that the church of the Messiah is fake. And so if somebody identifies as a Hebrew Israelite but is preaching a false doctrine on the internet, that the church is not part of the book, is not part of the program of the Messiah, then that person doesn't know what she is talking about. So the Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened that there are a lot of people who self-identify as Hebrew Israelites, but they are distorting information about Hebrew Israelites. They are distorting the words of God. And you need to be aware that the distortion will not come from only white evangelicals. The distortion will come will also come from Negroes who self-identifies as Hebrews. And they will be preaching the gospel, but they are preaching doctrines of men that were condemned by the Messiah. And talking about the Hebrews are relevant in the same way that the church is also relevant in the book of Revelation. As I said, in the book of Revelation, the Messiah wrote 7 letters to be given to the churches. And the Messiah told his people, the disciples, to preach the gospel to all the 4 corners of the earth. And that is the foundation of the ministry of the apostles, including Apostle Paul. Does it mean that the church has taken over the Hebrew Israelites? No. And here we are in Revelation. And we are saying in the book of Revelation, the Messiah is talking about the church. But the Hebrews need to be awakened that when it came to the selection of the 144,000 people, the Messiah selected Hebrews. And so we go back to our original presentation that the Negroes are the Hebrews. It means that the 144,000 people are Hebrews and they will be Negroes. That's the only conclusion I can come to. That the 144,000 people that will be sealed in the book of Revelation are Hebrews. That is a biblical fact. And when we say that the Hebrews are Negroes, then it also means that the 144,000 people will be Negroes. They will be Negro Hebrew Israelites. And I will not be surprised, and I'm not surprised, if you are watching this video, April the 5th, 2007, both Yeshua and John the Baptist appeared to me in a vision. And they were black and they had Negroid features. 2012, in a vision, the sons of Issachar appeared to me and they were Negroes. The sons of Issachar are among the 144,000 people who are sealed in the book of Revelation. Chapter 7, chapter 14 talks about the sealing of the 144,000. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the Negroes need to be awakened, because in the book of Revelation, The 144,000 people refers to Hebrew Israelites. And the Hebrew Israelites are the Hebrews. The Negroes are the Hebrews. And so the 144,000 will be Negro Hebrew Israelites. And the Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened. The Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened that the gates of heaven, the 12 gates, the foundations of heaven, they are based upon the 12 tribes of Israel. And here we are talking about the Hebrew Israelites. The Hebrew Israelites who are devalued and mocked as Negroes are the Hebrews. And so that is the reason why we need to awaken the Hebrew Israelites. And so that is the presentation that I have here for you. Why the awakening is important for the Hebrew Israelites. So if somebody asks you a question, why should the Hebrew Israelites be awakened? These are the reasons that I have given to you. Abraham was a Hebrew based upon Genesis 14:13. His descendants are Hebrews, including the Messiah. The Old Testament talk about the Hebrews. The New Testament began to talk about the Gentiles. That is an indication that the Lord has salvation plans for both the Hebrews and the Gentiles. That doesn't mean that the Gentiles who are grafted into the kingdom of the Messiah have taken over the Hebrew Israelites. Because in the book of Revelation, the Messiah made it clear. He selected the 144,000 from the 12 tribes of Jacob. And these are the tribes that are scattered over the world. The Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened that the Messiah warned in the last days Jerusalem will be trodden by Gentiles until their time is up. The Messiah needs the Hebrew Israelites. The Messiah needs the Hebrew Israelites to be awakened that in the last days there are people who call themselves Jews, the chosen of God, but they will be not. They will not be Jews. They will not be Jews. They will be the synagogue of Satan. And the Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened. There's some group of people would try to steal their identity, but that is not what the Bible is talking about. The Bible is not talking about stealing of identities. The Bible is talking about the true Hebrew Israelites. Revelation 2 verse 9, Revelation 3 verse 9 talks about stealing of identity, but stealing is not going to work. If you steal, you are a thief. And it's a blasphemy to say you are a Jew if you are not. Because the Messiah said that you are a synagogue of Satan. The Hebrew Israelites need to be awakened that in the last days, the identity will be stolen, but it will not be stolen forever because the stealing and the theft will be exposed. And the Messiah said it in Revelation 3 verse 9. You make those who say they are Jews, they are not, come and worship the true Hebrew Israelites, who are the Negroes who are scattered over the world. For that reason, you need to be awakened that the Negroes are the Hebrews. Thank you for watching this video. My email is raptureafrica@yahoo.com. I'm leaving it in the description box. These are the reasons why the awakening of the Hebrew Israelites is prophetically important. The final trumpet of heaven has sounded based upon revelation, and the Hebrew Israelites need to know their Hebrew identity before the Messiah comes to gather the outcasts of Israel and the dispersed of Judah from all the four corners of the earth. Thank you. Share this video, share this message. It is a message of prophetic awakening of the Negroes who are the Hebrews, from A to Z, from Abayudaya in Timbuktu, from Abayudaya in Uganda to the Zakor in Timbuktu, from Timbuktu to Uganda to North America. The Hebrews need to be awakened. The Abayudaya in Uganda need to be awakened. The Zakor in Timbuktu need to be awakened. The Hebrew Israelites, whether you are in Jamaica, whether you are in Massachusetts, you are in Idaho, you need to be awakened. These are the reasons why you need to be awakened. From A to Z, Abayudaya in Uganda to Zakor in Timbuktu. That is your message. Thank you for watching this video.